to Deals with Heels, where female entrepreneurs thrive. I'm Debra, your host. Welcome to the show. We have a great guest today talking about stuff that you guys know I need help with. So you guys are going to get help too. I love to talk about burnout and how we all get there without realizing it. So today's guest is definitely a expert in that arena. Her name is Jo Stone, and she is a former corporate executive turned entrepreneur and the founder of the Balance Institute. After blowing up her life, Jo redefined success and created a new way to honor her ambition without burning out. She now helps ambitious women overcome burnout, rewire subconscious patterns, and create meaningful, balanced lives. Jo is passionate about sharing practical strategies and inspiring stories to help empower others to live aligned and fulfilling lives. Please welcome Jo Stone to Deals with Heels. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
I am so happy to have you on the show, all the way from Australia.
That's right. Coming to you from the future, as always.
Yes, from the future. Well, I always like to start the show talking a little bit about your entrepreneurial journey. And it's a little bit in your bio, but tell us a little bit about how you got to where you are. I blew up my life too. And so when I read that, I was like, yes, there it is.
Yep. Another one who's done it. I was in corporate for 20 years of my career, but always had a passion to start my own business. I don't know why. It's just always been inside me, but it was waiting for the right opportunity for circumstances to align. And in the end, circumstances didn't align. And so I made them align. I was very much the picture of having it all. I had 2 young kids. I had built my own house. I was in the C-suite. So I was a chief marketing officer with a regional role. I had teams in 5 countries. I was on a not-for-profit board. So I was ticking all the high achiever things that were meant to make me happy. I had 2 new cars in the driveway. And yet there was something inside me going, is this all there is? I've meant to have arrived. This was at about 33. I'm meant to have arrived. Why aren't I happier? Why don't I feel fulfilled? What is missing? And after lots of soul searching, I ended up deciding that the only thing that was possible was to blow up my life. And it started off with selling the house, because the house was the thing that I had a beautiful big house with a pool and chickens, but it came with a really big mortgage, and that was having me trapped in a job that I couldn't leave. So we sold the house, we downsized, halved the mortgage, moved further away from town. And that then was the first domino to fall. So sold the house, I was then able to quit my job. My husband could then quit his job that he was miserable in. He had lots of mental health challenges, and ended up settling in this new house. And it was after we'd moved in this house, and then I ended up checking myself into hospital, thinking I had an incurable autoimmune disease, was having an attack, and lying there going, okay, I've blown up everything. I've changed jobs. I've got rid of the house. I've reduced the financial pressure. It's meant to feel better now. Like, I've done everything, almost traded in the husband. He's still around, but okay. And then it dawned on me that the only thing left was me, that I was the thing that actually had to change. I had to learn to stop getting all my worth from external validation and looking to others for approval and looking for everything to be perfect and constantly thinking of the next thing without ever being able to actually enjoy the moment. And so I then went
Gosh,
on
I
this
feel like that was like telling my story from when I was young, for real. Just the whole accomplishment and the value. You and I talked about that before we went on the air, and I really identify with that part of your story.
Yeah, and many people do, and many people come to me about to hit go on the blow up button. So it's like, don't wait. You don't have to do all of that. There are other ways. And so I then was able to really take my corporate expertise, which, if you boil it all down, even though I was in marketing and a range of other adjacent industries, my zone of genius is taking things apart and putting them back together again in a way that makes sense, whether that was a marketing campaign, a product, a department, a company strategy. I would pull it apart. And so I pulled my life apart, pulled myself apart, and then worked out what is actually mine versus what was inherited versus what has come from society. And then by going deep into leadership frameworks and neuroscience and ancient wisdom, was able to then put myself back together again. And then the path to entrepreneurship found me. A lot of friends started knocking on my door and saying, "Can we have coffee? What are you doing? You seem okay, and you're doing all of this." And yeah, one week I had 8 coffees in the week and went, maybe there's something in this, because becoming a life and mindset coach was never something in my wheelhouse. I thought I was more comfortable, black paint and high heels, a suit, some post-it notes, and a whiteboard. Like, give me 100 people in that room, and that was my happy place. Dealing with feelings, and no, that was definitely not me. I was more about the strategy and the hardcore and let's push. And here I am now. It's been 6 years since I started my business, the Balance Institute, and yeah, have helped hundreds of women in close proximity not blow up their lives and really learn the tools and strategies they need for balance and to avoid burnout, which so many are on the path for.
Yes, we all get to that point. I had a burnout specialist last season that helped me a lot. And one of the things that I have learned is that, like, all of that go that you as an entrepreneur get to a certain level, usually it's somewhere in 6 figures, and you've hustled your way there. The hustle culture is what got you
Mhm,
there. But
mhm,
you can only hustle so much. There's
mm,
only so many hours in the day. There's only so much until you're down in the dirt, burned out. And that has been a big adjustment for me to get away from hustle culture and more towards working towards that something specific. And you don't have to hustle to get it. You just have to accept and let
mm,
go. And that mindset piece, it was really difficult because I, like you, marketing in corporate America in very competitive industries.
mm.
And so it's go, it's power, what's next, and keeping those campaigns going. And man, it just got me.
Absolutely. And it's when you are starting out a business, hustle culture through all the gurus is very much alive. And I remember thinking, right, I was consulting as a hybrid when I started my business. I was doing a program between 2 and 4 in the morning and then trying to build a funnel from 6 a.m. I had a 2-year-old at that point in time who was still getting up at the night. And then I was squeezing 7 days consulting in 5. So I was hustling pretty darn hard. But what I
Mhm.
quickly worked out was that, I would hear all these gurus and write morning routines, and it was, up at 5 and then, meditate for an hour. And then it was all about the cold plunge and the green smoothie. And I sat there and I said, who's doing their lunches? Who's dropping their kids off at school? Like, none of that was in any of there was no spending time with family. There was no obligations or things that they had to do. And I realized that these were all men, or they were all women without children, and trying to tell me what success looked like. And that's when I started to get really angry, going, well, in order to supposedly be successful, I have to ignore a huge part of my life. And so for me, it was this appreciation of, what, I'm going to have to chart my own path here. And because hustling and working 80 hours a week isn't feasible, why have I had children if I never actually want to see them? So how do I find this middle path that doesn't involve? Because to me, all I saw were women who were hustling and they had nannies raising the children and they worked 80-hour weeks. And sure, they had the Cartier this and the, Louis Vuitton that, but they didn't really have a relationship with their children very often.
Or
Or,
anybody else with that
yeah,
kind
or
of,
anyone. Or
right?
they were, almost stay-at-home mums, or they worked part-time at the school, from 9 until 2 and had holidays off. And I went, I don't want that either, but I don't want the 80-hour a week hustle path. So what is that balance where I can still be ambitious, I can still reach my potential, I can still thrive, but I want to do it in a way that isn't just about pushing? And the more I learned about magnetism and the more I learned about intuition and feminine energy, the more I was able to actually fast track. And yes, sure, sometimes there are seasons in life when you got to hustle, but you learn to put that down and things actually happen easier and they come to you faster. Recently, last year, I ended up sort of revamping my signature 12-week program. And the first one I hustled and I pushed and I asked 25 people for their feedback on, what do you think about this? The second one, I downloaded in 2 hours. So
Right.
I didn't really do anything. I made the space. I took myself to a hotel for 3 days for it to come in. And I literally don't even pull it together. I pull it in and I download it, and it literally spewed out of me in 5 hours, and I didn't change it. So
And
I've
I
learned
think
that there
that
are faster ways.
well, and I think that we just need to redefine what hustle is, right?
Yeah.
That's hustling. You were hustling for a short amount of time. I mean, it wasn't like you were winded, but for me, when I say let's hustle, let's just get it done. Not,
Hmm.
I reframed that. I was an athlete and played basketball. Hustle was just part of it. You had to quickly get somewhere. And we turned it into a marathon, like we had to damn hustle the whole way, right? A marathon, you're not sprinting the whole way, but that's what
No.
we were doing. And that's what hustle culture is when, it doesn't have to be like that. And you can still be motivated and say, today I need to hustle, but
Yeah,
tomorrow.
but there's also a balance of recognizing, all right, I've hustled for a while now. I've got some stuff done. But now, you know what? I'm listening to my body because I do that, and I need to rest because I'm tired. So I'm going to honor what my body needs and not continue to push through it and ignore it and be so hooked onto achievement and external validation and external markers of success that I'm going to lose myself in the process. I'm going to ignore what I need. I'm going to ignore what I want and just be dictated by some guru that I've seen on socials who doesn't actually live my life.
Well, and I question sometimes, well, not sometimes, all the time, if it's authentic. If it
Mm,
sounds like, really, who's really doing that? Right?
mm.
Who's really getting up and doing all of those things every single day and eliminating all of the stuff, all the messiness?
Usually
Like
men.
there's messiness in there, right? Yeah, a man does it
Yeah.
because what do
Yeah.
they have to worry about? So and it is a lot of them, but for us, we've lost our ability to succeed and be feminine,
And I
right?
think when women are able to tap into that feminine edge that they have and stop trying to be like men, recognize our differences, recognize our superpowers, that we can do extraordinary things, we can have extraordinary power. It simply comes from a different place. So the more we put down, we don't have something swinging between our legs. We have to embrace what we have. Let's use it instead of assuming that it's not good enough or it's too feminine or it's too weak, which I see too often.
Percent. Women executives. I saw this statistic and thought, wow. And they were talking about how people receive criticism, even
Mm,
constructive criticism. And they were talking about women executives get like 75% of constructive criticism. They get a lot of it when they are just their normal activities or constantly somebody telling them if they're doing a good job and how they can do it better. And men in those high executive C-suite, 2%. 2% constructive
mm,
criticism compared to 75%
mm,
constructive criticism for women, them telling us how we can do it differently
mm.
and be better. The same position, just male and female difference. So this innate credibility that men have that I don't know, and maybe you can tell us if that is, I mean, them projecting how we're supposed to be based on society's expectations of a woman executive, or if it's just them feeling that something's not right. We're supposed to be feminine. We're supposed to, you know what I mean? That the
Mm.
energy's off because we're in that male environment and that's not who we are. I thought it could be that as well.
Yeah, I mean, it can be. Conditioning runs really deep, and that subconscious conditioning about the role of women and where it is. So, yes, that would definitely be playing a part. But I think also so many women energetically are looking for constant validation and feedback, whereas men are closed in terms of like, I don't need it. I've got this. I'm good. Whereas when so many women, and I work with a lot of senior executives and business owners, they on the outside project confidence, like, yep, I've made this decision. And on the inside, like, oh my God, have I made the right one? Have I made the right one? And they go home and they think about it and they think about it at 3 a.m. and they beat themselves up because they didn't consider this. And so they're misaligned energetically. They
Yes.
project confidence, but it's not full bodied, hell yes confidence. And I find that the more They learn to build, I call it unshakable confidence, that no matter what happens, you know you're going to be okay. When they get unshakable confidence, that criticism, I'm not saying it goes away but it reduces, because also you stop taking it personally because you know that you've got nothing to prove. So when women are in this prove yourself energy, and so many women are constantly going above and beyond, let me give 150%, let me be perfect all the time, then part of that is constantly looking outside of themselves for feedback. How can I be better? Because they assume whatever they do is never good enough.
And the validation, looking for validation.
Mm-hmm.
And as women, we're really hard on each other.
Mm-hmm.
We're very, like, almost you can never do anything right. We don't stand together and appreciate our differences. And it's I don't know if it's cultural but if we stood together, we would be so unstoppable. If we could accept that about one another and not be, well, you're not staying home with your kids, you are staying home with your kids. Your
Mm-hmm.
hair's long, you cut your hair, you're a Democrat, you voted for this. I mean, it is just constantly out there. No wonder we feel the way we do sometimes. But I am a reformed people pleaser. I work hard to heal those triggers and understand that it doesn't matter what others say or think.
Mm-hmm.
This is who I am. This is me. And I'm not changing based on the chaos that happens around me. I'm a Scorpio and I can be intense. And a lot of people don't care for that. And I can be directly honest. And I'm normally really like this, happy. But when I convert over to just smart, I don't feel one way or the other about it. I just say it. And it's very direct. And I know I can be intense, and I've spent 50 years blocking that and trying to curb it and be another way. And I'm just done with that. This is me. I know not everybody is going to get along with me. And I know that there's parts of me, just like everyone else, that aren't as likable as others. Everybody has
Mm-hmm.
them.
Yeah.
And accepting and knowing what it's there for, mine is useful. My friends will call me and say, "Hey, what are you doing? Are you working on something creative?" Because they're wanting to ask corporate marketing Deborah a question. And she's not in charge. She's not in charge on a regular basis. And so she's valuable, though. She's very valuable. That part of me is important, but I can't live with her in charge because then we're hustling. And right, it's a different, but understanding that part of myself and accepting it was really difficult because I would say and be intense, and then everybody would react. And it wouldn't matter if they reacted good or bad. The fact that they were reacting to it made me self-conscious of it growing
Mm.
up. And it was really hard to break free from that. What kind of tips do you have for us to teach us how to be more accepting? I mean, I know what I did and I've talked enough about that on the show. Tell us how to get past it.
Yeah, I find that women are trained usually to be perfectionists, and we expect everybody else to be perfectionists. And usually I call it the trifecta. We usually have perfectionism, always comes with procrastination and people pleasing to an extent. And whether it's outright people pleasing or things like worrying about letting others down or not being able to say no, struggling to hold boundaries. So many women struggle from those components. And when we're also trained from a young age to put our attention out on others, to take care of others, to put others' needs first. So it's no wonder that attention out, that we're groomed to, look, so-and-so needs a hug. Can you go give them a hug? So-and-so's unwell. Can you take them to the sick bay? We're programmed to constantly put that out very, very
And
easily.
people like that, right? People respond usually. You get positive reinforcement from
You do,
people
because you're
because
helpful and, you're taking care of
exactly.
your brother, or you're being a good girl, all of that conditioning. But then that very easily starts turning into comparison. So then you project your perfectionistic views. In order for you to be perfect, you have to act this way. And then we can almost viciously attack anyone who dares to show their vulnerabilities, because they're not subscribing to the view that we're all meant to be perfect. We're all meant to be hiding our flaws. But the more we realize that that perfectionism is just an illusion, as the wonderful Brene Brown says, is just a 20-ton shield that we're all carrying around in order to stop us being hurt. How do we all start putting that down? And women who are, listening to your podcast and who are being prepared to be vulnerable, start shattering that myth that we're all perfect, that we, dare not be selfish, that we don't really have any needs, that we need to come last. And the more we claim our voice, the more we claim our power, that we own that we have desires, whether that's, to eat lunch because heaven forbid we stop working,
I know.
whatever
I
our
spilled my
dreams are, the more that we can do that and actually tap into what it is that we really want, not what we should want, and put down some of those facades around perfectionism and people pleasing. I find that that has been, for a lot of my clients and myself, the pathway to actually reclaiming the truth of who we are. And then as you begin to see that, because before you can show it to the world, you have to reacquaint yourself with the parts of your past or your personality that you've typically abandoned, or you've decided, as you said, is too intense or too much or too loud or too big or too brash, or whatever your too was. And the more that you start owning that and saying, yeah, I'm too intense, but that's what makes me me. And I know I can turn it up and I can turn it down, but this is me. And we all have our flaws. I think that's one thing men are a lot better at, is they just own that they've all got flaws and they're okay with it. And they, and when they're young, they don't like it and they doof someone on the head and then they get on with it. Girls are bitchy and mean and passive aggressive. So we've been trained all these characteristics from a young age. But yeah, I guess to sum up, the more that you are willing to see the truth of who you really are, to claim back any parts of yourself that you've abandoned, and then really have the courage to bring that to the world, the better it will be for all of us.
That is inspiring. And you guys, she is in Australia, across the world, across our planet, feeling and doing the same things that I'm doing in the United States, in Oklahoma, and that all of you are doing too. So you're not alone. And I have a tendency to isolate when I'm healing and trying to figure things out, or when I'm hiding. When I was in functional freeze, I was isolating and keeping myself locked away because of pride, or because of I knew deep down I hadn't made the decision that was right, but I couldn't because I was in functional freeze. So it was easier to isolate than to figure that out and just feel like I'm just moving forward. And so you're not alone ever, because all over, right? Look how far away she is from me physically, but spiritually, energetically, we are on the same path. And I have found that to be very true with women entrepreneurs. Just being a guest and having guests on the show. And I think that's empowering.
Absolutely. There is, I think you mentioned earlier, there's a movement, there's a group of women who don't want to subscribe to this old paradigm, and we have to stick together. And whether you're from a small town or a big city, it's finding other women like you. And that's the beauty of the internet these days and podcasts, and we can connect with people who we might not have women like us anywhere. And I used to joke that part of the reason I started my business was because I couldn't really find anyone else like me who had the same big dreams and ambitions. And all my friends would say, oh, why are you working so hard? Take a step back. I was like, but I've got something to accomplish. I didn't yet know what it was. I can't, it's not that I couldn't rest. I'm just so driven by what it is that is I now know is my purpose and is my mission, that you have to find other like-minded women who are on the same path. And the more of us, I believe there's plenty of opportunity to go around, plenty of people that are looking for different voices to hear. So thank you, Deborah, for doing the work you do and reaching out and touching the women who have been called to you.
Well, I definitely know that that is my path, my soul path. I am on it. It feels very magnetic, which was kind of a challenge because I'm a Scorpio and we're mysterious, right? We don't always want attention. I'm doing attention marketing. How can you say no to the attention? It was this paradigm that I had to come to terms with. But as soon as I did, my life changed. So oftentimes those things about us that are challenging and that feel scary and sometimes yucky you don't want to do. Sometimes that's the very path you need to take. And it was for me until I could embrace that part of myself. I can't change my birth chart. I can't change who I am. This is me. And I spent a lot of time trying to water it down. And it felt wrong the whole time, but it was really hard to get out of. And I think your tips would have helped me then and will help people now too. I want to definitely, before we stop, I want to talk a little bit about burnout and some of the hidden signs that you have crossed over and you're really burned out that you don't realize that's what it is. Can you give us some of examples of that?
Yeah, sure. I think many women have normalized feeling exhausted and depleted and running off fumes because everyone else around them is, how are you? Oh, busy. I'm so tired. So we've almost glorified the signs of burnout. But what I typically find for many women is if you are feeling exhausted all the time, if you are feeling empty and you're starting to wonder what it's all for, and you mentioned earlier, things like hiding or feeling like you have to do it all yourself and not asking for help are some of the signs, particularly for high achieving women who think that they should better do it all because when we grew up, we were told that we could do anything. We've translated that to mean we should do everything. And so the
Yes.
more you're able to say, you know what, actually what matters to me right now, and not just think that the answer is working harder. I need to be better organized. I need more time in the day. If you're pushing but doing it alone, then they are some of the symptoms. Combine that with things like perfectionism, people pleasing, and a lot of procrastination, particularly if you have an identity as a high achiever or someone who can get stuff done, then they are very, very strong signs as you take on this ever increasing workload, whether it's work, home, caring for parents, whatever it may be. You take on that workload and you push harder and harder, and then you keep saying yes to everything. You don't have any boundaries. You push harder and harder. It's recognizing that it's a lot, that you are not broken, that there is nothing wrong with you if you can't hold it all. But I have found that it starts with putting up your hand and saying, you know what if it doesn't have to be this way? What if I don't have to feel exhausted? What if I don't have to feel unfulfilled and live in fear of being selfish and asking for help? So
Boy, for me, a good sign was when I did set a boundary, if it felt really uncomfortable, like I was being a bad mom or doing something wrong, that was a good sign that that was a good boundary I should have because it shouldn't feel like that when I say no. I shouldn't feel guilty about feeling no. I shouldn't worry about how it's going to get done just because I couldn't do it. And I shouldn't call and ask him, are you getting it done? I know I couldn't, and all of that. If I found that I couldn't almost hold it, right? I had to find out if it was getting done. I hadn't really let go of it all the
yeah,
way. And that was a
yeah,
good sign that, yeah, that's a good boundary that I need to try to reinforce. And it
yeah,
does feel really uncomfortable when you first start doing it. It feels really
absolutely.
uncomfortable.
Yeah. And I guess one last one is if you have wanted something and there's achievement that you're striving for and you get it, you reach it, but then it feels hollow, or you get no joy when you actually hit that achievement or that goal or that milestone, is a sign that perhaps it's not really yours.
Yeah. That it's like on to the next, right? I was a child that found I got a lot of value and recognition from achievement. It's like
Mm-hmm.
the beginning stages of that perfectionism. I'm Gen
Absolutely.
X and was in all the gifted and talented program. And tell me you're a perfectionist without telling me you're a perfectionist. If you were in that, right?
Yep.
We
You were
all
groomed.
I was groomed into it. And it was so hard to stop. And I still will find myself every now and then, it'll be like, well, I wonder if they got that done. And then I said, you know what? It's not your project to worry.
Mm-hmm.
Worry if you got yours done. And that's all that
Yep.
matters. If they need help, they'll call back. And hopefully
Mm-hmm.
they found another way.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very difficult to do.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
But that's why you need Joe's help. Everybody is because she can help you figure that out. If you can't figure it out on your own, that is what her coaching platform does. So tell us how all of my listeners can find out more about your services that you offer.
Yeah, sure. If they want to find out more about, I guess, my philosophies and things, I also have a podcast, which is called Balance and Beyond, and they can find that in iTunes and Spotify and all the usual places. But also my website would be the best place, and that's balanceinstitute.com, where they can find out details about, what I cover in my programs, what I do. I have typically every month, I have a range of free workshops and presentations on different topics. So they can come and learn more. And, I'm very much somebody who loves practical tips. I'm not just going to tell you to let it go and not actually tell you how to do it.
Right.
Because we usually know what to do, but we don't know the how. And so a lot of the joy I get is getting women who are self-aware, who know they need to change, who are ready for it, but no one's ever given them a step-by-step plan on how to do these things, like, put themselves first. It's like, well, yeah, sure, take a bubble bath, but what's the point? I feel guilty in the bubble bath anyway. So how do we let go of the guilt and do a lot of these things that no one's ever taught us?
One of the things that got me and that still will get me is, and you were in corporate America or corporate Australia, and is that if I'm not at the desk by 8:30, it's like this thing, like I've got to get, like I feel bad if I am not there yet. I may have been up half the night working on an ad campaign. I'm the damn boss. I don't want to be, and I know that logically, but I think it still gets my subconscious just that conditioning, like I'm doing something wrong because I'm not there. And any practical tips for how to deal with that?
I think a lot of that comes down to owning your value. And when you feel like your value is attached to output, as in whether it's time at a desk, hours that you work, or how much you can do, then you will be forever chained to that hamster wheel, because it's all about how much you can do. And you will then fall into that hustle culture we spoke earlier about. Whereas when you define your success by outcomes, by the influence you can have, by what you can achieve as opposed to what you can do, that's a very, very different paradigm. So when you're focused on outcomes, you'll go, you know what? I finished off that campaign at 3 a.m. I've done my outcome. That's what matters. I'm going to come in at 10 because I need some sleep in order to be the best version of me. A crabby lady on 3 hours sleep and lots of coffee is not going to be good for anybody. So how about I do what's best for me and every single human who has to interact with me in the next 24 hours? But that big shift, that mindset shift from output to outcomes, is a game changer.
I love the messaging of saving other people from having to deal with me, because it ties into our nature of caring for others, but I can care for others by caring for myself and not having that version of me that hasn't had any sleep or all of those things. I'm pretty good. I'm getting a lot better. Christina, my former co-host, helped me so much, but she was more just because you need it, just focus on the self-care, not the mindset of how to change it. It was a little bit, but it's still invaluable for me to focus on, okay, this is what I need. I can go deep into my reserve tank and not know I'm there.
As can many women, we have a really big tank, especially when you've been a mum, because, kids still need to be fed. And no matter how tired you are, you will always pull yourself off the floor or off the couch and do what needs to be done. And so we don't realize when that warning light is flashing. And for many women, it's been flashing for a lot of years, and they've normalized the flashing light and assume that that's how it is. When you work and you're a mom, it's just what's accepted. And my big message to everyone is it doesn't have to be this way. I know kids still need to be fed and you still need to work, but there are other ways to manage yourself, your mindset, and your life that mean you can turn that warning light off.
Yes. And when you said that, it reminded me of something. I was raised by a single mom. My daddy died when I was young, and my parents divorced right before that. And my mom was a nurse. And every so often we would have a fend for yourself night. That's what dinner is. It's fend for yourself. I don't care what you eat, but fend for yourself. It's up to you. And I so get that now, and why that was so important. And I would do that every now and then, but boy, mom had it together, didn't she, back in the day?
Yep. Friday nights in my family, it's called Get Your Own Night.
I love it. I love it. So
you get your own. It's not on
get
me
your
to get your
own.
food. Get your own.
Get your own, fend for yourself. So I will end that on for our thought for the day. I will link to all of Joe's stuff in the show notes, how valuable what she offers is to not just women. She likely works mostly with women, but so valuable for us to be able to step out and get past all of those blocks and pull ourselves out of burnout. You can get burnout being a stay-at-home mom, being a caregiver, all of those things aren't always difficult tasks, but they are tiring because you sacrifice everything within yourself to do them. So thank you so much for coming on the show, Joe. You are so amazing. I'm so grateful to have all of your info.
Well, thanks for having me. And like I said earlier, I think the more of us that are out there sharing this message, the better. So thank you for doing what you do and you're bringing these really important conversations to light.
You too, in your podcast as well. And I guess we've come to the end. So thanks for tuning in. Please like, share, download the podcast. We always could use more listeners. You can download my free ebook, 5 Steps to Having a Mindset for Success, in the usual place, but I will link to that as well. And all of our contact info. We love to get feedback on the show. So until next week, we're out. Hey, we made it.